So why are we out here today?
I'm part of a group called Sustaining All Life and United to End Racism, as you can see here. These are both projects of a global community called Reevaluation Communities. We develop tools that we use for mutual support, listening to each other and honoring our humanity, and then we use those tools to protect the planet, to improve our ability to stay active and stay energetic even when we are doing things that are difficult, and to reach across boundaries of race, class, gender, religion, and other kinds of background so that we do it together rather than through any kind of separation or scapegoating.
So this is a climate change event. What are we trying to specifically achieve today?
One great possibility would be to have encouragement for Governor Brown to say, yes, this is my opportunity to ban fracking in California. I don't need political clout anymore. I'm on my way out. Why not
overnight just ban fracking?
Sure, that would be a great option. That's speaking
what about
myself
coal,
as Jennifer.
So what about like coal, for example? Because we do have existing energy demands, and our unfortunately our grid is still based around these fossil fuels to some extent, and we can't obviously install solar panels overnight. So how would we do that transition if we banned something like fracking overnight, which, you know, compared to coal, it's like 50% less emissions?
Well, I'm not here really as a person with the technical answer to that, not being an engineer or an energy scientist. But what we find is that when people take turns exchanging listening time and listen respectfully to people that they do or do not agree with as human beings, then we come up with much more brilliant and creative solutions. All of us have been hurt in various ways, and that can make our pasts sort of limit how well we are able to think. But then we can undo that. We can undo the places that we have internalized our hurts, our racism, our other sexism and other things. And then as we become more powerful and more creative and we get input from more and more kinds of people, we find solutions that we hadn't even been aware that we were looking for. Basically, it's a process of helping us help each other use our minds better, and then great things happen.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
What's up, guys? Nuance Bro checking in. We're here in San Francisco, California at the climate change protest. Let's go ahead and talk to people, see what's going on. By the way, guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell for future videos. So why are we out here today?
My name is Evelyn, and I'm here with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and we're here to support climate justice and to bring awareness to the fact that the way that the system works is basically the systems that we have in place are not taking care of the nature of and is not keeping in mind conservation. A lot of corporations, big corporations, are not mindful about the environment and are not caring about people's needs. And that's why we're here today.
Sure. And what do you think the solution is as far as these problems?
Well, our party, we work towards basically bringing awareness to people to basically make corporations and make the government work for the needs of people. So whatever is going to require changing what is happening now, the attacks on the environment. So basically, bringing people who are powerful, corporations, government, to do some real change in terms of taking care of the environment.
But policy-wise, like, how would we achieve that?
I mean, whatever policies and laws that need to happen to really protect the environment and the environment in terms of like how it's affecting people. So whatever laws or policies that need to happen, however drastic they might be, because what I think is that until
you say however drastic it might be, but like what if that's at the expense of, you know, disenfranchised communities, or it might make people poorer, or it might result in, you know, just some unforeseen consequences that we might not really find ideal.
Right. Well, I think we are already in that situation, and there's already people who are really poor, and we can see that the world, there's climate change, and it's real. It's not It's not fake. And those are already really drastic things that are happening. There's poor people right now. There's already people affected now all over the world, here in our communities. So, and what we say is that capitalism is what's causing that. And so some of that needs to be looked at. Some of those policies need to be changed so that they are actually there to help people and not just to help a few 1% of the people get more rich. We need more accountability to those corporations, more accountability to the government that they.
And are all corporations that operate under a sort of capitalist system fall under this sort of guise of making the environment worse, or is it just like most of them, or what do you think?
I think maybe every corporation has to be looked at closely, but when you're talking about, like, say, oil companies or
they are fossil fuels.
Right, fracking, any of those companies that are like making billions of dollars and are basically doing it at the expense of our environment and of the people.
But is that necessarily a capitalism thing? Because you do have countries like, I think Norway has like nationalized the oil companies, and they don't necessarily use it themselves, but they export it to other countries to kind of fund their sovereign wealth fund. Saudi Arabia, sort of similar situation. But you do have corporations in America, like Tesla, for example, that's increased the renewable energy sector and battery storage and stuff at very minimal sort of environmental costs. And in fact, long term, it would probably benefit the whole of humanity compared to all these different fossil fuel things. And isn't that a positive effect of capitalism?
I don't know if that's necessarily a positive effect of capitalism, but that's a positive direction for those corporations to be looking into sustainable methods of energy, right? So, it all depends. It doesn't have to be like you said in Europe. They have a type of like socialism, but
social democracy.
Like a social democracy, yes, and yes, there are certain companies that are doing better and doing so. I think each company has to be looked at, right? So maybe not all companies are evil or all corporations. We're not saying that, but. That at least like the bigger companies and corporations, the really huge ones, and that also like have power through the government, those need to be looked at. Those policies, those companies, to better take care of the environment.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Are you shaking your head at me?
Yeah. So
why?
your shirt's dumb.
Why is my shirt dumb?
I don't know why. Why do I think it's dumb, or why are you wearing a dumb shirt?
No, why do you think it's dumb?
Because that's dumb.
But why?
Well, I don't want to be on camera nor talk to you, but you asked me why do you think it's dumb? I have no desire to talk to someone for a long period of time wearing that shirt.
Because I think nuance is important rather than being part of it.
Literally proving my point. All right.
So she was saying my shirt was dumb, and when I asked her why, she was like, because it's dumb. And I was like, but why is it dumb? And she's like, I have no interest in talking to someone who would wear such a dumb shirt. It's like, because I choose not to be part of a political party, and I believe nuance is important, rather than just subscribing to this over-generalized sort of tribal view of politics. It was just so ridiculous. So why are we out here today?
For the climate, for the earth, protecting the earth, and particularly because of the move in California to the recent bill that was passed that's on Governor Brown's desk to make 100%, get to 100% renewables by, 2040?
Something like that.
Something like that. So yeah, that's such a very specific thing that I think is so important, because we have to have goals. And in California, we've exceeded those goals each time we've set them. So that's a very particular reason why I'm here.
Well, not with the train, though, for example.
Well, with the climate change.
Yes.
With the renewables and with the bringing the carbon down.
Well, even as a country, we've actually been exceeding expectations. When Trump, unfortunately withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, which wasn't a binding agreement in the first place, but when they withdrew from that, they had projections of where the U.S. would go, and they had to actually redo those projections because we're actually falling below the emissions that they thought we would do because of market forces, actually, new companies generating renewable energy and things like that. So it seems like we're on a better track than we were earlier on.
It seems that way, but it seems also that we have an awful far way to go, an awful far way to go, and then we have to keep moving it along. Yeah.
So I think everyone acknowledges, just even by definition, we eventually have to transition into renewable resources. By its very definition,
But so many people don't acknowledge that.
Well, I think a lot of people, maybe, but there's always crazies. But
many people
I mean,
don't believe it.
I think, but by definition, if it's not renewable, it's going to run out, and we have to eventually transition.
Yes.
But during that transition, for example, I see a lot of people here with signs that says ban fracking now. Do you think that's like banning it tomorrow is actually a positive thing to do, or is that something we should maybe phase out over time, or maybe look towards maybe banning it domestically over a period of time and then maybe still exporting whatever we have from that?
No, we can't export the whole export coal issue is still very, very much alive. No, we have to ratchet it down, and if that means, say, ban it, and then there's political compromise and we do something a little...
But you don't support banning it right now?
Of course, why not?
Well, because we do have existing energy demands, right? And if coal actually pollutes more than something like natural gas, isn't that, like, even if it's incrementally better, it's still better than that, right?
I think what's important is to have the argument, because ban right now, that's a great position to take, and then there'll be political compromise. But you
always
have
start at
to
the
stake
extreme.
You have to stake out where you really want to be.
But let's say that was realistically achieved, though. What would happen to the energy demands that we currently have? People who need air conditioning, for example. I mean, solar takes time to actually roll out. Hydro takes time to roll out. Exactly, but that's the transition.
Yeah.
But if you say ban fracking tomorrow and we have existing energy demands, what would that do? We would have like blackouts, wouldn't we?
I'm coming at this from a moral place and a faith place. So as a religious person, I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister, so as a religious person, I want to stake out, this is where we need to go. And I trust the economy and the politicians, they'll make the deals that they need to make to move it along. But yet, fracking is a horrific problem. It causes earthquakes, it contaminates the water. It is a dangerous practice that we should never have.
It's not worse than coal. I hope we can agree on that.
They're both horrible.
Yeah, but I feel like more people focus on the fracking rather than the coal.
Well, I would include coal in that. Absolutely.
But if most of our country's energy still comes from things like coal and natural gas, like solar, I think is still maybe at like 2% right now. It's not enough to meet the energy demands of the entire country. I agree we should eventually transition to 100% renewables, absolutely, just for even national security or anything.
And the scientists and the politicians will figure that out.
I know, but if
and not that I have great faith in the scientists and the politicians, but
if we're also speaking realistically, though, like we can't just stop it tomorrow because it
won't happen. It won't
you say you're coming
tomorrow.
from like a moral perspective.
Yeah.
Like, what's moral about preventing someone from running air conditioning in the middle of summer in somewhere like Arizona, and they could have heat stroke and die?
Well, I don't want that to happen, and that's not what's going to happen.
So don't we have to speak about this in a more nuanced way, though?
Okay, so your position is be nuanced, and that's great, and I respect that. And we need different positions. That's what I've learned in my life of being a public health official, being a religious leader. You have to have people with different positions, and the nuance comes when you bring those different positions together and have a conversation.
And I know you were talking about, like, from a strategic perspective, start from the very extreme so then you can compromise to the middle or whatever. But I was just asking you, like, on a personal level, if you're actually taking into consideration the realistic implications of, like, what that would mean. Like, surely you wouldn't support banning those methods tomorrow because of, like, the actual effects it would have on real people.
Well, I feel like it's an artificial question.
Sure, I mean, I guess we're dealing with hypotheticals because it's obviously not going to happen. But
exactly.
Yeah, but I'm just asking, like, because I just see people saying ban it now, and they get angry at politicians who won't ban it now.
Yeah.
Is that reasonable, though?
They're gonna. That's the way politics works.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I thank you for your work and the invitation to bring nuance to things. And I always say, and keep in mind where you really want to be, and hold to that. Don't compromise that away. Always know where you're going.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. By the way, guys, if you want to support the channel, go to www.patreon.com/nuancebro if you want to see more content like this. So why are we out here today?
Folks are out here today because we know that we need a rising of people all around the world if we want to take on the enormous challenge of combating climate change.
And how are you going to achieve that?
Well, it's going to take a lot. I think fundamentally we really need people to be more aware of the problem. I think that's why people are gathered here today, try to get more people involved. We're going to need serious policy solutions. We need to be getting off of fossil fuels. We need to be investing in renewable energy. We need to be making people who are the most seriously impacted by environmental problems, getting them involved in the policy-making process. Oftentimes they're left out. So there's a lot of work we need to do.
Sure. And like, what specific policy proposals, like maybe one or two, for example, that do you think are important that we need to get passed, or like, what do you think we could really do policy-wise to solve this problem?
Sure. I mean, it's an enormous challenge, and I think off the top of my head, I'm not going to be able to lay out the entire plan, but I think we need to end fossil fuel subsidies. I think we need to
like overnight, or like maybe transition out, or like how do we do that?
I actually do think it would be good to do overnight.
Wouldn't that raise like prices for people who like, because our grid obviously is super, unfortunately, like based on fossil fuels, like coal, natural gas, and all those things.
Sure.
Wouldn't that raise people's electricity bills like substantially?
I don't know that it would, but I think if it requires a transition in order to make sure that people have affordable energy, I'd be okay with that. But I think we need to be moving the transition along at a much accelerated pace.
Maybe like a carbon tax, and then eventually putting some of those proceeds into investing in renewables or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's good. But the subsidies of fossil fuels are really that's just misdirected subsidies in my mind. I think, we shouldn't be subsidizing fuels that are killing the planet and that are making people sick. If we're going to be subsidizing, and I'm okay with that, frankly, but we should be subsidizing clean energy for all people.
And those subsidies are also on top of like the hidden subsidies of the negative externalities that they put out as far as, just pollution and, health problems it causes for people and all those different kind of things.
That's absolutely right. The cost, it's such a problem that people don't consider the full costs of our current energy policies.
And what do you think is a bigger problem, climate change or pollution?
It's really hard to assess that, because I think if you're looking at, humanity as a whole, the bigger problem would be climate change. It really threatens the existence of people. But for somebody who right now is bearing the brunt of fossil fuel use, and they might have kids who have asthma, they might have cancer themselves. For them, it's pretty hard to say that climate change is a bigger problem than pollution, because some people really are experiencing pollution in a very seriously negative way.
And so there's obviously a lot of people, I guess, more on the conservative side, who they don't necessarily say like climate change is completely bullshit, but they get very skeptical about people's claims because they hear people like Al Gore saying like the Florida Keys would be underwater in 2005 or something like that. Do you think it helps the climate change movement or clean energy or just the environmental movement when you have people like Al Gore out there making these sort of ridiculous claims that are provably false?
I haven't fact-checked all of his statements. I do think, we have to be careful. We want to make sure that we are taking an evidence-based approach. I think the evidence is clear, though, that climate change is happening, and that if we don't take major measures to address it, it's going to get a lot worse, and it's going to harm a lot of people.
And do you think market-based solutions can have more of an impact as far as improving the climate crisis versus actual government policy?
I'm not entirely opposed to market-based solutions, but I do think that right now a big problem, or a huge reason why we are where we are, is because of the capitalist economy that we have that encourages consumption above all else, that encourages people to engage in rent-seeking behavior, and essentially get in bed with government. And right now we're in kind of a death spiral where we are spiraling downward. Consumption, more and more fossil fuel use, and politicians who, might make a good statement now and then, but who really don't want to take the radical changes that are going to be necessary.
Sure, but at the same time, isn't it also capitalism that created the innovations that allowed us to actually go from, for example, in the pre-industrial era, we went from people basically killing whales and chopping down entire forests for their energy production, staying warm in the winter or whatever, to, an economy where, it shifted to oil and natural gas and coal, which was substantially actually better than what we were doing before with the whales and chopping down the forests, even though it's still bad. But it created all this economic uplift and everything in the meantime. And then now we're transitioning into renewables that was also created by the private sector, not any sort of actual government mandate necessarily. So isn't it also the benefits of capitalism is what actually allows us to sort of escape this in a sense?
I don't think capitalism has a monopoly on human innovation. I think human innovation exists apart from the capitalist system. You could argue that some people, when motivated by financial reward, will innovate, and I wouldn't dispute that. But I also think that the financial incentives have driven us to a really bad point, and so it's tough to look within that system to try to find the solutions. I think there may be some that I would agree with, but I am concerned about relying on capitalism to dig us out of a hole that I think capitalism really dug us into.
All right, thank you so much. So why are we out here today?
We're marching for climate justice. So we want a government in the US that will be responsible for bringing about change, making it a more green and safer place to work for people, and creating green jobs and making it safe for people to live.
And how would we what are we trying to achieve policy-wise with that, in respect to that?
Well, this week there's a global climate change summit. So this is why this is here today. Is to there's lots of people that are coming, and we wanted people to make it heard that they want change as well.
Sure, but what change specifically?
It depends where you're from. We have people from native communities who don't want oil being pumped from certain lands, like Oakland. I think it's called No Coal is here. They don't want their coal being dug up. People want safer water, and there's lots of other causes as well. There's so many groups here today.
So it seems like you guys don't have a ton of faith in the politicians as far as getting things done about this. Do you think there's more hope in the private sector, like the market economy, to solve a lot of these problems?
Yes and no. I know there are a lot of big companies like Starbucks, the simplest one, where they're...
What about Tesla?
Tesla's Tesla. So it's just
What does that mean?
they're trying to create a lot of things, and some of it can be helpful, some of it cannot. It just a lot of
solar panels, battery storage, renewables.
So it just depends really on what their goal is, whether it's actually to help the people or it's just to make profit.
Well, are those mutually exclusive though?
Sometimes they're not.
Access to green energy needs to be affordable for everyone. So whilst private companies can make it, and they are, if it's Tesla cars are very expensive, you can't buy those cheaply at all. You are earning a certain amount to be able to buy that. So if it was government subsidized or government funded, I know I'm from the UK, so we did up until recently fund solar panels, and now it's a massive backlash that they've actually taken that funding away because it's not incentivizing people to use it. There are people here that are saying we want green energy, so people should be listening, going, okay, so every sector should be listening, not just the public or private.
Obviously, all new technologies are going to be expensive starting out, but once you grow and increase economies of scale, the price tends to fall. I mean, the Tesla Roadster originally was $150,000. Model S, it went down to $70,000. Now the new Model 3, it's $35,000 if you get the cheapest one. And the price continues to go down, per kilowatt hour of batteries produced as they continue to produce more. Same with the battery storage. So it seems like it's becoming more and more affordable over time. I mean, it seems like they're doing everything they can to make things as affordable as possible, and they're not even registering any patents and stuff. They're kind of saying anyone can use our patents if they wish. Does that seem like a company that's sort of evil, even though they're profiting?
I think it's just right now it's kind of the wait and see. I mean, for me, in my opinion, I can be yes, they're evil, or no, they're not evil. For me, it's I still have to see more about it. But at this point, it's we don't have time to wait. We need to take action now, and this is you can see it everywhere. But like always, there's people saying no, global warming doesn't exist, or climate change, just like there's still snow, and it's just like ridiculous arguments like that makes it hard to realize, no, like we're damaging the earth, like that's our fault, and like so many creatures and the earth itself is like, it's hurting because of us. And I feel like we need to really talk about that and like ingrain it in our heads, like, hey, this is important. Like, take an example from what happened here and other marches all over the world, and it's just like, hear us out. Like, you say you're for the people, then actually be for the people, don't be for corporations.
So do you think, I think one of the problems is that around this issue on both sides, for example, people get very emotional and not enough sort of logistical facts come in, because if we're going to actually achieve this, we have to be aware of the logistics surrounding it. So for example, let's just take transportation for example. You have, I think, something like 2 billion cars worldwide, right? And most of them are obviously combustion engines, like 99% of them, over 99%. And I think the global car production rate is 100 million. So even if you literally overnight everyone switched to, like, all the car companies made every single one of the cars they produced electric vehicles, it would still take like, what, 20 to 25 years to replace all of the cars that are already combustion engines. And you know, obviously it takes time to build out the factories so that you can produce all these batteries and stuff. Like the Tesla Gigafactory took like years to build, and they're still trying to build more, and that's going to take even more years. So on the outset, it doesn't even seem like this is really going to be possible in the next 100 years, like, to really fully transition. So don't we have to kind of deal with these realistic obstacles and be honest about it with each other if we're going to really achieve anything?
No, yeah, I think you definitely have a point. I think if we look at the facts and say, okay, this is what we have, like, this is how we can work with it, then yeah, definitely. But a lot of people don't tend to care about that. They're kind of just like, no, my opinion's right, and therefore you're wrong. And if we get out of that and say, like, no, how can we make this better, then I think, yeah, you know, something can definitely be worked out, and saying, okay, these are the facts, let's work with them.
All right, guys, that's going to be the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Support me on Patreon. Social media links are in the description box down below, as well as merch. And I'll see you next time, bro.